Hey, this is Nathas, and I'm opening another Solforge Fusion booster from Set 2, Battle for Whitefang Pass. So this has been a really fun set to open, and I'm really excited to see if we could finally hit a foil deck, 'cause that's really what I've been searching for. But there's a lot of really cool new cards. The set looks like it's going to bring a lot of depth to the game. Alright, so let's start with our Terra deck. There we go. Alright, so we're starting with a Carnivorous Tarot. We've got a Feral Instinct. There we go. A Ferocious Druid. A Glowhive Nursery. Lead the Charge. Mystical Tangle Sprout. Refreshing Patriarch. Shifting Polymorpher. Pterodon Mauler. And Venerable Aetherroot. So our forward one here is Nova's Dominion, so you can play up to 2 Wisps, gain 3 life for each creature you have in play, then give one of your creatures +10, give an opposing creature -10. So there's actually some interesting synergy here, specifically with the Carnivorous Tarot and the Venerable Aetherroot. So when you gain life, you give your Carnivorous Tarot +5/+5, just like you would with a Kindred. But then your Aetherroot, whenever you gain life, you give this health equal to the amount gained. Um, so there is only one other way to gain life in this deck, which is your Refreshing Patriarch. That being said, there's if you pair this with a life gain heavy deck, you can have your Aetherroot continuously gain life, and your Carnivorous Tarot, every time you gain life, gain attack and defense. So Nova's Bounty gives you health for each creature you have in play. So that is one other way at cycle 3 to gain a lot of life for this ability. So Refreshing Patriarch, I think this might be one of the first Patriarchs I've opened so far, and I think this is a great card because it's just kind of like your Rex, where whenever another one of your dinosaurs comes into play, you give it +6/+6. Now, refreshing on this card can be really strong as well because obviously you want to be gaining life sometimes when you're playing green. So you can replace a creature, gain life, play more dinos that will get a buff. So that with the Mauler, if you have the Patriarch out, you play the Mauler replacing a creature to give it +4 aggressive breakthrough. You basically will give it +10/+6. Then if it deals damage, you could give something +8/+8. So that's a nice little synergy that you might see. Plus, the Druid with the Glowhive Nursery can be really cool as well because it'll give you buffs when you play minions in your Glowhive Nursery lanes, and your Ferocious Druid can play minions. So, this is a cool deck. Um, I think that it would be a little more interesting if it had a couple more sources of life gain, but this still seems like this would be a really fun one to play. All right, let's move on to our Tempest deck. All right. So we're starting with an Ardent Shardback, a Charger Mammoth, an Elementalist Ritual, Herald of Fury, Lightning Tamer, Nargath Commander, Raging Invocist, Spirit Golem Conclave, Thundersaur, and a Uranti Elementalist. So we have a Sunder here with a Stimble at level 2, a Gale Surge at level 3, and a Summon the Swarm at level 4. So this is an interesting one. I kind of like the ability to play your Thundersaur and then play a Spirit Golem Conclave there to give it plus attack. So you can basically play it to give it +15 attack, and you have a 15/22 with Breakthrough, Whenever they deal damage to it, you're gonna gain an additional attack. So that could be pretty game breaking and could potentially end the game. Plus, the commander will let you deal damage to your Thundersword to get additional power as well. So there's definitely a couple ways to gain power to your Thundersword here. Charger Mammoth I think is an interesting card because its stats are never too large. So it can be killed pretty easily, and it really telegraphs your move. So if you play your Charger Mammoth, you're very likely going to be replacing it to give a creature +8/+8 aggressive and breakthrough. That being said, it's something that you could potentially use as a little bit of a bluff for your opponents. They might think they need to kill it, where you're really just trying to get their focus off of that one creature to get to another. We only have, let's see, we actually don't have any elementals right off the bat, which means I think the only elemental here is going to be your Spell Swarm or your Spell Sprite. So that's the only way that you could really trigger Elementalist Ritual, which means that card might not be super effective in this specific build, but that's a great card for when you're trying to deal direct damage. And Herald of Fury is one I haven't seen before, so you may deal 5 damage to one of your creatures, then if that creature is not destroyed, you play a spell for free. So with the Urent, the Elementalist, and the Herald of Fury, you could potentially be playing a lot of free spells, and you could deal the damage directly to your Thundersword in order to make it bigger. So there are definitely some cool synergies here. I think that it's something where it's going to have to be with the right deck to pair this deck. But even all the self-damage stuff, you could do it to the Ardent Shard back as well. And then whenever it's dealt non-combat damage, you deal damage to all enemy creatures. So it could kind of wipe the board. So there are definitely some really cool cards in this deck. Um, I think that I might need to have to pair this with something with either a lot of elementals or with a very spell-heavy deck to take advantage of both the Herald of Fury and the no or the Uranti Elementalist. All right, let's look into the Necron deck. Starting with a Bloodletting Butcher, a Cold Heart Brute, Dark Heart Sorcerer, Dissipating Spectre, got a Grimgaunt Harvester, a Groot Meal, an Indomitable Fiend, a Keeper of the Damned, a Rune-Scarred Pit, and a Shadow Strength. Our Forgeborn is a Nyx Necria. We've got Dark Summoning at level 2, Dark Ritual at level 3, and Soul Rip at level 4. So this one for a Dark Heart deck does not have as many spells as I would like. It looks like we only have 3 total. So when I play something with a Dark Heart, I usually like to play stuff with either a lot of free spells or something that lets you play spells for free. That being said, the Cold Heart Brute is this really strong card I think that came out in this set because if you're playing Exalts, you'll get zombie minions, and then when you deploy it, you give your other zombies plus attack. So you can make brutes with your Keeper of the Damned. Your Indomitable Fiend's a zombie. The Groot Meal makes a zombie. And then in addition to all that, Rune-Scarred Pit, every time you play it, you play a zombie brute in the lane of the Exalt, plus the level 1 and 2 Exalts will trigger when you play the level 3. And when you play the level 2, your level 1 will also trigger. So you'll get 2 minions, 3 minions, or 1 minion, depending on how many Exalts you have. But something that's also really interesting is Shadow Strength. After you play it at cycle 1, it's free levels 2 and 3. So it's just kind of like Aegis Wings, another card in that cycle. So there's a lot of ways that you can kind of get around the fact that there's not as many spells. And then Bloodletting Butcher is another card that's interesting because you can deal damage to yourself to give it plus attack, but then if it kills something, you could deal 3 damage to the enemy player and gain 3. So it's kind of like a shamble when you kill one of their things with it. Grimgaunt Harvester is the other card that I haven't really seen too much of, or I haven't really looked into as much, but it's got 0 power, 24 health, and then when one of your creatures is destroyed, you give it 4 attack. So then if it has 12 or more, it loses defense, defender gains aggressive. But the biggest thing is when you play stuff like, where is it? Your Keeper of the Damned, you can destroy one of your creatures, give it attack, and then let that like get a zombie in the entire cycle of the turn. So this is an interesting deck for sure. There's some really cool synergies here that I think could be really interesting together. But I think Keeper of the Damned is one of those cards that's going to be so strong because it lets you get your death triggers and it gets you minions. So that's something that I'm really excited to see played a little more. All right, we got one more deck. That's our Loyan. I think with all the armor that's being added in set 2, Aegis Knight could be a really interesting card because it's a card that I never really looked at during set 1, but for set 2, it might be well worth giving it a try in the right build. There we go. So we're starting with an Aegis Knight, a Bulwark Bash, an Energy Prison, an Energy Surge, a Light Forge Sentry, a Repurposed Captain, Salvage Warden, Shield Node, Spirit Forge Sentinel, and a Taunting Lotus Betrayer. So we have an Ironbeard here with a Formation at level 2, a Promote at level 3, and a Shields Up at level 4. So I do like Promote a lot as an ability on Ironbeard, just because it gives armor and lets you battle something that's opposing, and Ironbeard didn't really have many abilities like that before. So it's like being able to battle something instead of just giving it minus attack can be really strong, and the armor will let it be resilient through that. So, speaking of the Aegis Knight, there's a lot of ways in this deck to either cards that have armor or get armor. So Bulwark Bash can give armor and deal damage equal to the number of armor on enemy creature, or deal equal to its armor to an enemy creature. Light Force Sentry already has armor. You can choose one to give creatures adjacent to it additional armor this turn, so that's another way to kind of gain. And then Shield Node also, when you play it, you give your creature in that lane 4 shield. When you play your creature in this lane, give it 10 shield and destroy it. Destroy the Exalt, not the creature. So there's a lot of ways to get armor to then buff your Aegis Knight. There's ways to potentially play or upgrade cards ahead of the curve with your Energy Prison, and then Repurpose is a new ability. So if this replaced a creature, upgrade a card in your hand. I think that's really cool with being able to play gizmos, being able to replace a gizmo, give it additional power, upgrade a card in your hand. That could just be a really strong ability. Um, it's also Spirit Forge Sentinel is another card that wants to be replacing other things. So the one thing about this deck is not really a ton of ways to generate minions on its own unless you're using your Energy Surge. So you might need to pair a deck like this with something that could generate enough minions. And then Taunting Lotus is an interesting card because if it's a lower level than your Forgeborn, you could give another creature +8/+8. So you could do that to your stealth creatures to really push forward a lot of damage. And then because it's taunting, you can move an enemy creature to this lane. So it's like you could take something away from in front of your stealth creature, give your stealth creature additional buff, and then try to push forward extra damage. So this is an interesting one that I think works a little better than I thought it would when I first started opening it, and it could be a lot of fun to play. So that was another booster kit from Battle for Whitefang Pass, which is the newest Solforge Fusion set that just came out. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll be opening some more kits.